Hi, this is Ike from Groovy Entertainment. Today we got another record to play for you. Today, record Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs from 1969. So let's get started.
Disneyland storyteller, and I'm going to tell you the famous story of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Our tale begins with the Queen, Snow White's stepmother. She's standing before her magic mirror, certain that she is the most beautiful lady in the land. So far, the mirror has agreed with her, but today, when she asked the usual question, "Who is the fairest one of all?" the mirror truthfully replies, "Great is thy beauty, O Queen, but hold, a lovely maid I see. Alas, she is more fair than thee." Alas, indeed, the Queen well knows who that would be, Snow White. For out on the castle steps is Snow White, dressed in rags, scrubbing like a scullery maid. But she is not unhappy as she goes to the wishing well for more water and sings. That's the prince. It didn't take long for that wishing well to work. Snow White is so startled that she runs right into the castle. No matter how the prince pleads, she will only peek out at him through the window curtains. Unknown to either of them, the queen is watching. Her jealous heart is burning with an evil scheme. Quickly, she calls in a huntsman and tells him to take the princess far into the woods and kill her with his own hands. But that's more than even a hardened huntsman can do. Instead, he urges Snow White to run away as far as she can and never come back. Snow White is horrified at hearing the queen hates her so. She runs and stumbles through the dark woods as fast as her legs will carry her. She's terrified by the dark forest. Tree trunks look like goblins. Logs turn into alligators. Bushes and vines tear at her dress with thorny hands. Finally, she falls exhausted, sobbing as if her heart would break. Suddenly, she notices the woods are very quiet. Looking up, she discovers she is surrounded by all sorts of little animals. Each one is looking down at her with eyes as big and frightened as her own, and she can't help laughing and laughing as she sings to them. Well, in no time at all, Snow White and the creatures of the forest become good friends. But Snow White needs a place to spend the night, and her new friends soon solve her housing problem. One little bird tries to lend her his nest, but it is too small. So the forest folk lead her straight to a cute little cottage tucked deep in the tall woods. Although Snow White doesn't know, this is the fairy house of the Seven Dwarfs. What a mess it is inside, too. Oh, too great a mess for a tired little girl to sleep in. From the 7 little beds and the rest of the tiny untidiness, Snow White is certain the house must be occupied by 7 dirty little children. With the help of her forest friends, she sets to work cleaning up the house as she sings. Not far away in a glittering mine of diamonds, the 7 dwarfs are getting ready to close. Imagine the surprise of the 7 dwarfs when they discover Snow White and their now spotlessly clean home. Snow White agrees to stay and cook for the dwarfs, but she insists they all wash their dirty hands before eating dinner. The whole forest is cheered up by the prospect of having such a wonderful princess to care for the 7 dwarfs. Everyone is happy, but old Grumpy. Grumpy, as you know, can never resist putting on a show of temper, no matter how small or how big the occasion. But he doesn't hold out long in this new wash game. The other dwarfs lend a hand. It all turns out to be great fun. Soon everyone is carried away with the spirit of being clean from head to toe. While the birds and animals peek through the cottage window and listen, the dwarfs play and sing this silly. Now, isn't that a silly song? But it's all too good to be true, because far away in the Queen's castle, evil doings are afoot. That magic mirror is telling the truth again. Now Snow White's stepmother knows Snow White is not dead. She's hiding with the 7 dwarfs. Conjuring up all the fiery magic of evil at her command, the Queen changes herself into an old lady and creates a beautiful apple. Under the apple's rosy skin lies the power to bring sleeping death to anyone who bites into it. The Queen herself will see to Snow White's end this time. There is only one way to break the spell of the poisoned apple. Love's first kiss. While back at the dwarf's cottage, Snow White is singing about the next morning. The dwarfs leave for work, but not before they warn Snow White to beware of all strangers. Snow White only laughs. She's not one bit afraid. It isn't very long, though, before a stranger does appear. It is an old lady selling apples, who is really the Queen in disguise. The birds aren't fooled, believe me. They dive and attack the woman and knock the poisoned apple from her gnarled hand. But it's no use. Snow White is blind to her fate and very indignantly shoos them away. She even invites the old woman into the cottage. Now the animals of the forest are really worried, and they rush frantically after the dwarfs to bring them back. But it is too late. Snow White has taken a bite of the tempting apple and fallen into a deep sleep. The dwarfs see the old witch leaving and chase her through the scary woods, which are suddenly filled with drenching rain, crashing thunder, and flashing lightning. Soon they corner the hateful witch on a ledge. Cackling down at them, she tries to loosen a huge boulder and roll it down upon her pursuers. But her evil days are over, for just then a great bolt of lightning strikes and sends her crashing over a high cliff. With a terrifying scream, she disappears forever, and the great storm disappears with her. The dwarfs return to their cottage and gather mournfully around the still form of their beloved Snow White. And over their tearful sorrow, they hear the singing of the approaching prince. The prince kisses Snow White. He can't know it for a moment, but he has just bestowed the gift of new life on the girl he loves. So he kneels in sorrow. The dwarfs and the animals mourn with him, and it is while they have their eyes closed that Snow White at last opens hers. Snow White sits up, and suddenly the world grows brighter. She smilingly reaches out to the happy prince, who joyfully picks her up in his arms. The dwarfs and the animals dance and jump with joy. And so our story ends as the prince and Snow White ride out of the woods and over the hill toward the distant castle where they will live happily ever after.
So, that was Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs from 1969. So if you like, subscribe, share, and comment, have a groovy day with another video coming out real soon.